All right, let's dive in. If you live in a major Indian city, maybe Bengaluru, Mumbai, Delhi, the daily commute, it's more than just getting from A to B, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's often a real battle, like a daily survival challenge almost.
Yeah, exactly. You picture it, right? Those endless traffic jams, just seas of cars and bikes, buses, trains, packed solid. You can barely move.
And the noise, the constant honking, it's a whole sensory
It
experience.
really is. It feels less like commuting and more like just getting through it each day.
And that feeling, it's completely tied to this incredible urban growth we're seeing. India's cities are expanding so fast.
And the numbers are pretty mind-boggling, aren't they?
They really are. By 2030, the projection is something like 600 million people living in urban centers. I mean, think about that
Hmm.
600 million. That's like the whole population of the EU, essentially, packed into India's cities.
Wow. And our current transport systems, well, they just weren't built for that kind of density, were they?
Not at all. They're creaking under the strain already. And it's not just about being late or frustrated.
No, the consequences run much deeper.
Exactly. This daily grind, it has real economic costs, environmental costs, social costs. It affects everyone. So uh, our goal here in this deep dive is to sort of unpack that, understand the specific hurdles for India's urban transport.
And then look at potential solutions, right? Based on the info we have, how can we actually move smarter?
Precisely. It's about understanding why things are the way they are and what the path forward might look like.
Okay, so let's start with that chaos, the reality on the ground. The honking, the weaving, the
Oh,
slowness.
the slowness.
Yeah.
We saw a figure for Delhi, didn't we? Average speed in peak hours.
Yeah, it was something like 25 kilometers per hour. Painful. You could probably jog faster than that, seriously.
It really highlights how gridlocked things get. And this isn't just annoying, is it? It's incredibly expensive.
You mentioned costs. What kind of numbers are we talking about?
Well, the analysis we looked at suggests traffic congestion just in the four biggest cities. Delhi, Mumbai, Bengaluru, Kolkata costs around $22 billion every year.
$22 billion just lost to traffic.
Just lost to traffic. Think about what else that money could be used for. Infrastructure, services, anything really.
It's hard to wrap your head around that number, and it's not just money either. There's the air we breathe.
Absolutely. All those idling engines, crawling vehicles, they're major polluters. Vehicular emissions are a huge part of the problem, contributing up to, what, 40% of urban air pollution in India?
So the traffic is literally making us poorer and making us sick.
That's the harsh reality of it,
Yeah.
which naturally makes you look around, right? How have other places handled similar massive growth?
China comes to mind. They urbanized incredibly quickly.
Which it really did. Between the late 70s and around 2015, their number of cities just exploded from under 200 to over 650.
Uh-huh.
And facing that, they went all in on transport infrastructure.
What did that look like? What was their approach?
Huge investments. High-speed rail, obviously, but also massive expansion of metro systems in cities. And rolling out bus rapid transit, or BRT, networks, they did it with incredible speed and scale.
You see the difference in scale when you compare, say, Shanghai's metro to Delhi's.
Exactly. Shanghai's got over 800 kilometers of metro lines, carrying more than 10 million people every day. It's vast.
And Delhi Metro, which is a huge success story for us, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely, a landmark project.
It carries maybe 6 million plus riders daily, which is fantastic, but the network itself is around 390 kilometers, less than half of Shanghai's.
It shows the sheer ambition China put into it. And the sources suggest it wasn't just what they built, but how. Centralized planning was key.
And funding?
Massive funding allocated quickly, plus a real focus on speed of execution and trying to make different modes, metro, bus, rail, work together.
Now, we have to be clear, India's context is different. We can't just copy-paste the Chinese model.
No, absolutely not. Our democratic setup, budget realities, the organic growth of our cities, it's a whole different ballgame. A direct lift wouldn't work.
But there are lessons there, surely.
I think so. The core lesson isn't the specific political model, it's the prioritization. Making public transport a top national priority, focusing on integration, and demonstrating that, look, rapid, large-scale change is possible if the will is there. It shows the kind of scale we need to be thinking about.
Okay, so let's bring it back to India. It's not all bad news. We have had big successes. Delhi Metro is the prime example, right? Launched back in 2002.
A game changer for Delhi, absolutely. It proved we can build and run world-class systems here.
And other cities are building metros now, too. And look at Kolkata, that underwater tunnel under the Hooghly River this year. That's serious engineering.
Definitely. The technical know-how exists. The capability is there.
But metros are incredibly expensive. That figure you mentioned earlier is something like 350 crore rupees per kilometer.
Yeah, that's the kind of ballpark figure, which means, realistically, they can't cover the whole city. They serve major routes, sure, but huge areas are left out. Millions of people don't live near a station.
Which brings us to the buses.
Right. The unsung heroes, in a way. Buses actually carry the vast majority of public transport users in India. Way more than the metros.
What are the numbers there?
It's estimated around 48 million passenger trips daily on buses, compared to maybe 10 million or so on all the metros combined.
So buses are critical, but they face serious problems too.
Profound problems, yes. Several big ones stand out from the sources.
Like what?
Well, first, the condition of the fleet. A lot of buses are just old. Back in 2022, something like 40% of the urban bus fleet was over 10 years old.
Which means more breakdowns, less comfort, higher pollution.
Exactly. And second, there just aren't enough of them. The total urban fleet is around 1.3 million buses. Compare that to China, again, they have over 700,000 electric buses alone. We're way behind on fleet size.
And the killer point, they're stuck in the same traffic jams we talked about earlier.
Precisely. A bus doesn't help much if it's crawling along at 25 kilometers per hour with everyone else. It doesn't offer a reliable, faster alternative for many people.
Which pushes people towards private vehicles if they can afford it, making the congestion worse. It's a vicious cycle.
It really is. And then you have that other massive frustration, the last mile connectivity problem.
Ah, yes, the last mile. You get off the metro or the bus, and then what? How do you get home or to your actual destination?
It's often where the whole journey falls apart. You might need an auto rickshaw, but fares can be inconsistent. You might have to haggle.
Or you might want to walk, but good luck finding a decent footpath.
Exactly. That 2023 survey was shocking. Only 30% of cities had walkable footpaths covering even half their road network. Many paths are broken, blocked, or just non-existent.
And things like bike sharing.
They exist in some places, but the systems are often patchy. Bikes aren't always available where you need them, and they're not always well integrated with the bus or metro.
So that final step breaks the chain. It makes the whole public transport system less useful for so many people. It's not really door to door.
Which tells you the solution isn't just about building more metro lines, right? It has to be broader.
So what does a potential blueprint look like? What are the key steps suggested by the sources?
Well, metro expansion is part of it, definitely. There are plans, I think, for over 1,700 kilometers across 27 cities by 2025.
Something like that, yes. But the key is making those stations accessible.
Absolutely. You need good feeder systems, reliable, frequent, affordable ways to get people to the metro. That means things like well-run minibus services, properly integrated e-rickshaws, dependable bike shares,
Yeah.
connecting neighborhoods to the main lines seamlessly.
And affordability is huge here, isn't it? Even metro fares, like 10 euros in Delhi, can be a major burden for many.
A massive burden. We saw that stat, 60% of urban Indians spending over a quarter of their income just on transport. That's unsustainable for so many families.
Spending 25% of your income just getting around. Wow.
So making public transport truly affordable, maybe through targeted subsidies, has to be part of the conversation, treating it like an essential service.
Okay, so better metro access, affordability. What about the buses? Electrification seems crucial.
Non-negotiable, really. We need a much faster shift to electric buses. We've got, what, over 12,000 now? Which is progress.
But a drop in the ocean compared to the need?
Exactly. The upfront cost is higher, sure, and you need the charging infrastructure. That's a challenge. But the long-term wins, cleaner air, less noise, lower running costs are huge. Schemes like FAME are good, but they need way more scale.
More electric buses, but also finding ways to get them moving faster, presumably.
Yes, dedicated bus lanes, priority signaling,
Yeah.
things that actually let them bypass the worst of the traffic.
Yeah.
And tackling that last mile, seriously.
Which means what specifically?
It means proper investment in pedestrian infrastructure, building sidewalks that are actually safe, continuous, and usable. That's fundamental.
Not just an afterthought.
Not at all. And it means integrating things like e-rickshaws, properly regulating them, making them part of the formal system, making bike shares reliable and easy to use, prioritizing walking and cycling.
And technology must have a role beyond just e-buses.
Oh, for sure. Smart tech is vital for making the system work better. Things like real-time tracking apps for buses and metros, like they have in Chennai or Hyderabad. That should be standard everywhere.
So you actually know when your bus is coming.
Right. No more guessing. The goal should be one integrated platform, ideally nationwide, covering all modes, and things like intelligent traffic management systems, ITMS.
Using tech to manage traffic flow.
Yeah, using data, AI maybe,
Mm.
to optimize signals, manage congestion. Bengaluru piloted something like this and apparently cut peak hour delays by about 15%. It helps make the existing roads work smarter.
Okay, this all sounds great. More metro, electric buses, feeder systems, sidewalks, tech. But it all costs money. A lot of money.
Huge amounts of money. Metro lines, electric bus fleets, charging stations, even just building proper footpaths everywhere. It requires massive, sustained investment.
Is the current funding enough?
Well, the union budget for 2024-25 put about 1.3 lakh crore towards urban infrastructure overall, which is significant. But given the sheer scale of the transport deficit, you could argue much more dedicated funding is needed specifically for transport.
Where does that money come from?
That's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Public-private partnerships, or PPPs, can help. The Hyderabad Metro is often cited as a successful PPP model.
But the government still needs to be heavily involved.
Absolutely. Especially for things that aren't commercially attractive on their own, like subsidizing bus fares or building footpaths. That needs public money. And it needs political will.
Ah, political will. Often the hardest part.
It often is. It's sometimes easier politically to announce a big new flyover than to commit to the long-term, less glamorous work of upgrading the bus fleet or fixing sidewalks. Prioritizing public transport consistently takes real political commitment.
And maybe rethinking where current money goes. You mentioned subsidies earlier.
Right. It's a potentially tricky conversation, but some sources raise it. Are there indirect subsidies for private vehicles, like relatively low fuel taxes compared to some countries, or road building that primarily benefits cars? Could some of that funding be shifted towards public and non-motorized transport?
That would be a major policy shift.
It would. It involves trade-offs. But it's a conversation worth having if we're serious about tackling congestion and pollution and making transport equitable.
Because ultimately, this isn't just an abstract problem about traffic flow or budgets. It's about people's lives.
Profoundly so.
Yeah.
It's about the vendor trying to get goods to market, the worker facing a 2-hour commute each way, the student just trying to get to college. The current system eats up their time, their money.
And their energy. Their dignity, sometimes.
Exactly. Think back to that stat again. 60% of urban Indians spending over a quarter of their income on transport. That's just a huge burden.
Imagine what people could do with that money and that time if transport was better.
It could be transformative. Better job opportunities become accessible. Education is easier to reach. It levels the playing field. It makes cities more livable for everyone, not just those who can afford a car or happen to live near a metro line.
So, wrapping this up then, the challenge is huge, no doubt. Decades of growth outpacing infrastructure.
Yeah, the sources clearly show the daily reality, the massive costs, economic and environmental. We saw some lessons from elsewhere, like China's focus, even if the model isn't directly transferable.
We've had successes like the Delhi Metro, but also major gaps, especially with buses and that critical last mile.
And the blueprint forward seems clear, at least in its elements. More metro, but crucially, connected by good feeder systems. A massive push for electric buses, a serious focus on walking, cycling, and integrating local transport.
Using smart tech to optimize everything and finding the political will and the funding to make it all happen. Maybe even making some tough choices about where public money goes.
And we know India can do big, complex projects. The engineering talent is here, the planning capacity is here.
So it comes down to sustained focus and execution across all these fronts, doesn't it?
Pretty much fixing footpaths, buying those e-buses, making sure you can actually get to the station easily, using tech smartly, making the tough policy calls.
And it leaves you with a final thought, really. If almost 2/3 of city dwellers are spending so much of their income and time just moving around.
Imagine the unlocked potential if that wasn't the case. The human energy, the economic activity, the sheer improvement in daily life. How different would your city feel?